Tell you what's interesting. 60% of people who are hearing this, they're not subscribers. They like the content, they listen, they watch, but they're not in the Bulletproof Brotherhood. I feel like they're missing out, Joe.
I agree.
I don't want them to miss out.
Nor do I.
I want them to be in. I want them to receive the secret handshake to be in the circle of trust. In order for that to happen, they need to click subscribe. That's right. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, you're listening to this in your car, however you're getting this, we need you to just take 2 seconds to go and click subscribe. It means the world to us. And that means we can bring more energy, more good content for you, and it means we'll be closer. And that's what we want. We want to be your bros. So, ladies and gentlemen, join the Brotherhood today. Click subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. I'm JT, and I'm here with the roughneck, Joe Worthington.
Hey guys, how you doing? Neck's a little bit stiff, but still thick as fuck.
Believe that. Now, here's the deal. People ask us all the time, I'm getting ready for comp. I'm getting ready for comp. Comp in 6 to 8 weeks.
You know what I say to them? You're not ready, bro. So fuck that.
Go back to training. What were you thinking? No. I mean, look, you got 6 weeks. What are you going to do in that time so you're better prepared? There are things you can do, and we're going to outline exactly what that is. Whether it's your first comp or your 5th comp or your 10th comp, if you do your prep better, you will perform better.
Right on.
So you've had this question a couple of times, haven't you, Joe? People hitting you up?
Get it often. Look, I think it tends to come from the less experienced,
of course,
newer practitioners, usually white belts, and it often, through the Instagram, I usually have these conversations, but it'll be like, hey, I've registered for my first comp.
Yeah.
That's kind of the backstory.
You can be proud of that. Like it's a courageous jump.
Oh, fucking A. Like entering a jiu-jitsu comp, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
First, man, props go out to anyone competing. Like it is, I don't think it ever gets easy.
No.
And it's definitely at its hardest in the beginning.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's a lot of mysteries. Like, okay, I've entered my first comp. What do I need to do? This is kind of the question. It's like, all right, well, it's a big question.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of
specific things.
Yeah, sort of things I find myself repeating. I'm guessing it's the same for you.
Definitely. I mean, your coach is going to say to you, oh, just train.
Yeah.
But really, that's not quite enough when you're preparing for competition. So I think the first thing we have to talk about is weight category.
Yeah.
Because this creates a lot of fuckery.
You got to choose that. When you register, it's like, which weight category? And you're like, shit.
Yeah.
And it pretty much seems like you're always in the middle.
Yeah.
You're at the bottom of one, or you're just a little bit too heavy for the one below. Yeah.
That's right. And depending on if you're gi or no gi, you could factor in your gi weight. But yeah, this is important. And our general stance is you should compete as close to your natural weight as possible. Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stress of competing for the first time or the first, few times, there's already enough going on with that you don't need to add stress as well of trying to lose weight and changing your nutritional habits. And like, even if you weren't showing up, like even if you're showing up bang on whatever weight you need to be on comp day, you might have had 4 to 6 weeks prior to that where you've been like stressing about eating and, oh fuck, I got to watch my calories and that whole thing. Or the worst case scenario, which you see playing out a lot, is it's like competition day and you wake up and you're like, fuck, I'm a kilo over.
Got to do a sweat run.
Yeah, I got to go for a run before the weight. And it's like, you don't need that. No one needs that.
No, adding stress, comp is stressful enough. You shouldn't add extra stress. This does not increase performance. So definitely, even if you are going to go to a lighter category, you need to already be not too far from it because you weigh in on the day. It's only at specific jiu-jitsu competitions where you might weigh in the night before, like the Abu Dhabi World Pro. Even with the ADCC, they weigh them 3 or 4 times. They weigh them over days.
Oh, wow.
So you have to actually stay quite close to your weight, which is pretty brutal. But the reason why we say
But it's smart, right? Because it just means you don't try and do anything extreme.
No, or if you do, you're really committed to that.
Yeah.
Because you weigh in on the day, 2 points, we talk about this all the time, is being fueled and being hydrated. And fuel, we're talking carbohydrates. That's what's going to give you muscle glycogen. And then water weight. Like that's the easiest way to drop weight is just sweat it out. But you need to be hydrated. And this is the thing that's really underestimated about performance, that someone who comes in, I guess, relatively relaxed, well-fueled and hydrated will perform better than someone who's stressed out and dehydrated and, this is the person who's going to fuck out.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. For me on comp day, like one of the things we know to calm your nervous system, food is a really strong influencer of that. So if you are like fasting or you're hungry, naturally that lends itself to you being more upregulated, to you being more of a sympathetic nervous state. Eating a big meal will naturally put you into more of a parasympathetic nervous state. And so on comp day...
hang on, break that down for me. So
sympathetic meaning like fight, flight or freeze response. Parasympathetic meaning like more restful, calm, right? Yeah, so think about like you have your dinner and then you're like chilling out afterwards. That's the parasympathetic place to be. Yep. Now, obviously at comp, you are going to be pretty upregulated, like pretty sympathetic because you're already fucking stressed about comp.
That's right.
You're not going to feel like eating on the morning, right? And we're not going into comp prep on the day specifically, but if you can have eaten well the day before and that whole week leading up to it, and then you can sort of force some breakfast in on the day of and just be like, that's a really good way just to help manage your nerves.
Definitely.
Versus I just had like a piece of toast for breakfast and a black coffee and I got a Red Bull that I'm going to drink a couple of hours before that's not lending itself to you being calm whatsoever.
That just sounds like my pre-podcast, pre-workout.
The Red Bull salad.
The Red Bull salad. The cocktail. But I think that's the thing that people underestimate how much it does have a negative effect on just your ability to think. Right, because there will be a point in time where you actually have to think about your jiu-jitsu techniques, and being calm is very helpful. You don't want to be adding this whole cutting weight, even though it's really popular. It's like, oh, I'm cutting weight. Hear about it in the UFC. It's dumb.
If you're elite level, sure, but for general practitioners, don't fuck with it.
Nah, don't worry about that.
Next one.
Structure your week. Now, this is something that I actually had learnt from wrestlers and powerlifters, which is to have your hardest day the comp day. So I'm a big fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes. Some of the greatest wrestlers in the history of wrestling come out of that college. And what they would always do, like they compete all the time, but Saturday, or if they had a meet on a Friday or a Saturday, they would practice all of their training to be the hardest day on that day. So they would make their hardest wrestling session almost like comp simulation on that day. You don't want to have it that your hardest training is on Wednesday and Saturday is just like an open mat. You've only got 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You want to have it very practiced that you're getting ready for this big thing on a Saturday or whenever the comp is. So it really gets you in the habit of when you can relax and then when you can kind of get your body ready. So it's very practiced. It's very natural. So when you come to the Saturday, your body is very subconsciously ready. Today's the work, today's the hard day.
Yeah.
And powerlifters and strongmen will do something similar. If their meet is on a Sunday, then they will often do like an events or comp day, which will simulate that. And my old Taekwondo coach used to make us do this. If we knew that we were scheduled to compete on a Saturday or a Sunday, in the weeks leading up to the comp, he would make us come to the gym. We had to bring all our snacks, all our drinks, because like Taekwondo competitions were very similar to jiu-jitsu. You just mats in a huge basketball stadium or a fucking velodrome or whatever the fuck, and you have to stay inside all day because they might just call you up. Oh, no, sorry, two fights were cancelled. Someone got injured. You're up now. Oh, I thought I was up in half an hour. No, you got to be good to go. And he would do random shit. He'd like roll the dice and he'd go 1 versus 6. And you're like, oh shit, I'm going up against heavyweight Pete. And he'd make us fight. And then we'd have to hydrate, eat, and we have to stay in the gym all day. You know how it gets sweaty and claustrophobic, and you just want
your adrenaline, like you're watching other people compete as well.
That's stressful.
So you're getting excited, then you're getting tired. Like it's this roller coaster of
and you don't have to exactly do that, but I do believe conditioning yourself to perform on a given day is actually helpful.
I like that. I think personally, thinking of like say I'm going to push back on that and offer up another approach.
Sure.
Which would just be for the person who's newer to the game, I'd say like that could work really well, but it could also put more pressure on the person to change their routine.
Okay, yep.
And in that way, I'd say, look, don't worry about too much. Just keep training. Show up to the comp. You'll be fine. You know?
I disagree. But that's okay. No,
Of course you fucking do, because you just told me another thing and then I disagreed with that.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Thanks for clarifying. I disagree because we know why, James.
That's all right. Everybody does have a different approach, and finding the approach that works for you is important. That is the key thing.
Yeah, I think it's about like we're like throwing things out there. Like, hey, give this a go. Like, you might be someone who's naturally quite competitive and training quite a lot and go, fuck yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make Saturdays my thing, and you know.
Sure.
But for someone who's like, I only get in on Tuesday, Thursday nights.
That's it.
And now you're telling me I got to change that up. That could be an extra stressor, right? So
for sure. And yeah, we're not actually here to make it more stressful. We're here to kind of unpack it so it's less stressful, more accessible. Now, here's something which is actually not talked about enough, especially with beginners coming into a comp: strategy. I do this all the time. Now, it sounds like, it sounds a bit meta, a bit esoteric. What are you going to do when you get to comp? Like, you need to have a game plan. The person who has a solid game plan and implements it generally does better. Like, that's just as simple as it gets. From a novice level up to an expert level, whoever can execute on their strategy, they're typically the winner.
statistics in comps show that the person who scores first points typically wins the match, right?
Yeah.
Like majority of the time. Yep.
It's not always the way. There's always some cool exceptions where someone's down 16-0 and they pull out the flying triangle finish. It's exciting.
It's my kind of match, flying shit.
It's fucking rare. It's like, I think it's really important to know that if you're not sure what your strategy is, I always say, when I'm asking someone who I don't train with, what's your best game? You want to go with your A game, and if you're pulling guard, you better have been practicing how to pull guard. Because I was talking to...
it's not like I never pull guard, but at this comp, I'm a pull guard. Yeah. No, don't do that. You're shit at that.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Some people are like, I play guard, and I say, how do you pull guard? They're like, we start from the knees. It's like, start standing. Because here's the thing, like in the act of pulling guard,
I could get injured.
If you're not, imagine. But if you're not good at it, you can just get like ankle tapped and it's 2 points and they pass your guard. And do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's the simulation, even if you're not going to do I roll on Saturdays, start standing and practice the thing that you're planning to implement.
Yeah.
Whether it could be takedowns, maybe you love judo or you love wrestling and you're like, I'm definitely doing takedowns. Fight for that and implement that strategy.
Yeah.
I think this is the thing that when you first start, it's probably not talked about. You're like, we do heaps of techniques. I don't know what my A game is. Talk to your coach.
Yeah, they'll tell you.
They might know your game better than you and go, no, you do this really well. You should, if you don't know, ask your coach and go in there with it in your mind.
I used to find I remember my coach asked me, what's your game plan? And I never wanted to have one because I didn't like adding... my competition preparation was just show up and do what I do.
Right.
And, it worked okay sometimes and not others, right? I was also never trying to be that guy, but I didn't want to add stress to the situation. But looking back, I'm like, well, I did kind of roughly have a game plan.
You did, yeah.
And it would have made perfect sense. But the mysterious part for me back then was, I have to have this complex blueprint of my game. They go here, I go here, then I do... It's like, I get a collar grip and I'm going to use my sacrifice throw and then I'm coming up to half guard, knee cut, side control, far side armbar. It can be that simple, right? A, B, C, D kind of thing. And it's not to say it's always going to play out that way, but if you've drilled something and you're like, this is my roadmap.
Yep.
And once I've this is what I'm trying to do, you're already a couple of steps ahead of someone who's like, I'm just going to step on the mats and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right. And it's good to have a backup strategy, which is, well, what if I don't get the takedown and I get taken down? Okay, sure. Well, that's my B game, and that's these 4 steps.
So for those of you who are familiar or not familiar with the combat game Tekken or Tekken 2,
you fucking nerd.
Get on board. There's going to be plenty of people who relate to this. There's a little special move where you go double back and you go power punch, power kick, same time, and you stun them. It's like a little purple flash. And then you go through this 5-hit sequence. Shout out to Liquid Metal, our guy, Alan.
Alan, yeah.
Tekken aficionado. He's probably not listening. It doesn't matter. But I always like playing as King.
Trains all the fighting. He does no fighting.
That's right. He does all the training, but never does the combat. But that's cool. Whatever. He moves well. but you stun the opponent and then you do like this 5-hit combo. I always took that to imagine if you could just briefly just stun your opponent and you could do whatever you wanted. The perfect guard pull, the perfect takedown, and you could just implement it. When you watch super high level jiu-jitsu competitors, they look like they've just stunned somebody and they're just doing the business to them. You're like, whoa, that person looks defenseless. Imagine if you could just play your A game. It's never going to be that easy, but what would you do if you had that opportunity? And I think it's good for you to imagine, how does this work if this works perfectly, and then make strategies and plan Bs for if it doesn't work.
Yeah, I like that. And just on that, like you can literally take like a piece of paper and then just go like my A game, and then go step 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And and just drill the fuck out of it. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to drill it every single round leading up to comp, but it might be like every training session, I want to make sure that I try and hit my A game on at least like 2 of the roles that I'm doing. Yeah. You're just reinforcing it.
And look, I didn't have a strategy when I started jiu-jitsu because I only had 2 techniques. Close guard.
That's basically our generation of jiu-jitsu.
Armbar. Yeah. I didn't need a strategy. That's all I had, so that's all I was going to do.
Mine was the exact same game.
Like
close guard,
flower
armbar.
Sweep, armbar. And like...
Oh, so you would sweep and then armbar from the top?
If I could.
Right.
If I couldn't sweep,
I just armbar from
close guard. But then also like, because I didn't even know chokes, I would just engineer an armbar from anywhere. Like I'd just be like, I just got to straighten that guy's arm out. Fucking, it's a deadlift. But I guess the ignorance made the game simple, right? I only had 2 moves, so that's all I was going to do.
Yeah, simple.
But the next thing, which is a common question we get, is, well, what do I do with my extra training? Should I focus on, like when I'm not rolling, should I focus on mobility, or should I be lifting, or should I just focus on technical training? Like,
I'm going to start some sprints, build up that capacity.
Yeah, look, in truth, if you're not already lifting, or you're not already, if it's not already in your routine, don't start something new now. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah. I think you actually want to make sure that you're as focused as you can be on having a good routine so you can keep working on your jiu-jitsu. If you're already lifting and you're already doing mobility, awesome. If you're not, that's okay. That's cool. Don't start new shit now, whether it's diet, lifting, ice bars. Like, don't just suddenly do something special thinking that that's going to be the thing that gets you over the line on comp day.
I'm going to push back on that and say, maybe jump in and do some CrossFit, you know?
I'll do the burpees. No.
Yeah, no, totally. Don't start new shit, because it's all that stuff's like long game. It's like you're not going to get anything from strength training if you do it for 4 weeks. Yep. You're not going to get anything from mobility if you do it 4 weeks. So
I mean, look, you'll get something, but that's not going to win you the championship.
That's right. And it's extra load, and so it's like, no, stick to what you, same as what we're saying with the food. It's like, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Like, really funny. So real early days, I was still a blue belt. A wrestler we knew was training up for MMA, and he'll remain nameless, but Gene Karpomfs is a beast of a human. He came and trained with us.
Always get the surname.
Oh, man.
It's respectful.
He's a beast. I want to name him, but it was classic, like, wrestler mentality. We just had hard rounds, and I was like one of his best roles. I stayed back and did an extra half an hour for him. He was getting prepared for like XFC, which was like this really shitty MMA fight organization that was down at like Geelong. He was fighting a kickboxer or something, and he was like one of the best wrestlers in Australia at that time. And then this is like a week out from the fight. He gets on a spin bike after training. He's got the towel tucked into the hoodie, and I'm like, what are you doing, Gene? He's like, I'm just getting my cardio in. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I've got to have, it's MMA, so I've got to have extra fitness. I'm like, dude, you've just trained for 2.5 hours. You don't need it. You're only going to fight for 15 minutes, bro. Like, he's like, no, I've got to get that extra fitness. I'm like, oh man. Oh, and I mean, he's a beast. Like, you can't mess with Gene. Gene went from being a skinny kid to being an absolute tank of a human. But it's just this mentality. It's almost like fear of missing out. Like, I have to do extra.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily actually going to help you.
No, it's not. But there is a case, though, isn't there, that sometimes for some people it gives them that psychological thing. It's like that Mike Tyson, like I'm up on the road before, like while my opponent's sleeping.
Yeah, sure.
It's a mental edge. But yeah, I think that's right. There's some rare individuals like that who are maybe beginners at jiu-jitsu, but maybe they've got an elite background in something else where they're going to be bringing that kind of elite preparation. But for the majority of folks, like, nah, man, get off the fucking spin bike. Like, don't training, you're good.
Yeah, exactly. So don't make any new changes 6 weeks out.
Keep it simple.
If you're already doing it, stick with it. If you're not, that's cool. Now,
but still sign up for the program. Just don't start it yet.
Yeah, not just yet. Now, this is something which is not done well, even at an elite level. Taper. Now, we did talk about deload week not too far back.
Yep.
And I had a friend of ours Samoan strongman contacted me and said, bro, you feel awesome when you don't do the training, but then you show up to comp day and you're weak as fuck. It's no good, bro. And I'm like, that sounds like a taper not done well. And what I have witnessed, even at an elite level, is people training up until like 2 days before comp. Like hardest rolls ever, 2 days off. That's our taper. And we still train on the Friday. You know, this kind
Adam's a fan of that. Shout out to Adam, Child's Vantage. But you know, it works. He's like, I like to go to the gym the day before competition and do a couple of hard rounds because I want to feel like I just want to be.
Is this super injured Adam who's not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But
this is how we should call him. Super injured Adam. Shout out.
But he shows up well to comp.
He does, but I think this is.
I disagree with it, but I'm just saying that it does work for some folks.
No. I think this is bullshit. People are succeeding in spite of this. It's like when you see boxers who are shadow boxing with dumbbells in their hands. They're doing it because their coach did it, and their coach was great. But their coach was great not because of the dumbbells in their hands, right? Like, yeah, it's hard to keep your hands up and shadow box holding 2 kilo weights. But biomechanically, it's proven that this is working all the wrong muscles. This is tightening up your biceps, tightening up your forearm. It's shortening this up, which actually limits your ability to be able to extend. Even though it will give you good endurance for keeping your hands up, it's not going to make your punches snappier or better or anything like that. So this idea of Pohada.
So no dumbbell, because I use that in my jiu-jitsu warm-up.
Yeah, shadow boxing in the guard with 1 kilo weights.
Anyone can get it.
Yeah, thanks, Guido Hutzits. We appreciate that. No, anyway, if you don't...
What's that cunt?
That's a sound by Julian. Get it on there. No, look, I think a lot of people are used to training really hard, and it's this FOMO. It's like, oh, but if I don't train hard in the comp, like Shanji talked about his brother, like Salo, who was also a great competitor. He's like, no, I'm recovering. And what they've shown with other sports, Olympic level sports, that it does take you a full 2 weeks to restore to your highest level. Now, when it comes to tapering, this doesn't mean you do nothing. I'm not saying you do nothing. But what you need to do is you need to be reducing your volume, backing things off so your nervous system's fully recovered. Still practice your skills. Still drill, still roll, but you want to be doing that with minimal chance of injury because you've worked so hard for so long. And if you're preparing for like a comp that you consider to be important, it's your first comp, your 10th comp, doesn't matter. You don't want to get injured. Like how many fights in the UFC and in MMA, in the UFC and in jiu-jitsu where a fighter has to pull out last minute?
Yeah.
They overtrained, they got staph, they got sick, they tweaked their knee. It happens all the fucking time because this is the
point.
As
a fan, it's not fucking good enough.
Yeah, fuck that. Get on the steroids and man up. No. Truth is, actually, after USADA came in, way more injuries in MMA.
Was it?
Yeah, less growth hormone, less old Vitor,
damn shame.
New old man body.
Speaking of which, you see Overeem just got pinched for doping in Glory.
Oh, as you well should.
Sorry, he looks enormous.
But I think this is the thing that you have to understand is that even though your coach, maybe your coach is Adam Childs, and he's pushing you to do the hardcore training, if taking our advice, at least the week before comp, reduce how many hard rolls you're having, back off the intensity of what you're doing. So if you've got some niggles, they smooth out a bit. Your fitness is not getting better that week. You're not going to dramatically get better in that 1 week technically.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is actually preserve what you've got so you can show up your best self on the day.
I agree. And I think just for Adam there, I think he would do that. He wouldn't do a bunch of rounds. It'd just be like 1 or 2 just to get that feeling. Right. So I can see the purpose of that. Here's my take on that piece. if you are training super hard and preparing for that comp, if your volume is high and you're like, whatever, you're training 3, 4, 5 days a week kind of thing, then I think it's really important that you kind of pay attention to cutting down that volume in that final week a little bit and being mindful of it. I think if you are coming into the comp and you're like still only training 2 or 3 days a week, and the reality is that you train on Thursday night and the comp's on Sunday, then I think you should just do what you do.
Yeah.
Because that's more of like the hobbyist kind of thing. It's like you're not actually training at a level where you're going to be fatigued from the training session you did 3 days ago.
No.
I look back at the comp when I used to compete, and I would almost take the week before competition off, and it didn't work well for me. No. I was like, I think I was really just looking for a bit of a break from training.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm just kind of not going to show up this week, and I'm going to be super fresh and like keen to grapple on the weekend. But the reality is I'd show up on the weekend and be like, fuck, I feel really
out.
Yeah, I haven't touched a gi for like 7 days.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about that. When I'm talking about a taper,
No, yours is, you said it, it's like reduce your sets, reduce your hard rounds, but still do the technique, be there.
Yeah. And I mean, even the night before a comp, I would drill. But you need someone who's willing to do that for you. Like, play your A game out. Put the gear on, Mom. But I think it's one of those things is that you do need it in your mind. You do need it in your nervous system. Like, it needs to be really well practiced, and you need to feel the sense of readiness. Even though you can't control what's going to go on in the day, you need to have a feeling that I've done whatever I could do to be prepared so you can sleep well the night before. And this is the other thing with like the eating and everything else. Sleeping well the night before is actually key. And they talk about it in warfare. They talk about it in sports performance. They talk about it in so many things. Getting a good night's sleep is going to be one of the best things you can do to make the next day successful. And so Charles Poliquin, RIP, he was super strict with his athletes, but the night before a big comp, he'd let them eat whatever they wanted, even though he would be so strict on their food. Like, there was a famous case of him taking, I think she was a hammer thrower or a shot putter, and she had to cut weight and do all this stuff. He took her down there. She's really nervous before the Olympics, took her down the food hall, and he's like, you can have like a cheeseburger and some chips. She's like, what? He's like, no, do it. She was like, but this is like not in my diet. And he's like, no, because he knew the dopamine and the satisfaction she would get from it would help her relax, help her sleep, which means she could wake up the next day and really fucking perform. And I think it's something that most people don't understand with the psychology of performance. Being relaxed is better for you than just being hyper tense and psyched out.
Yeah, like my first coach, old school guy, used to tell us, don't ejaculate for at least a month before competition, no sex. And I was like, fuck, for real? He's like, yep. I'm like, all right, I'll take that on board. And I did it. And I remember for a couple of comps, one in particular, the Asian Championships in Tokyo.
Yes.
Which I didn't compete overseas a lot, but we went over there for that one. I was at Blue Belt, and I had been abstaining for like 6 weeks.
Sexually pent up.
I was a fucking nervous wreck. I was so blue ball wrecked. It was not even funny, bro. And I think I beat one guy in that comp. I fought 2 divisions and I got my ass handed to me, beat one dude, points, I think. I'm like, fuck, that was the most terrible idea. Flip that to other comps where I've just, I don't know, whatever, hung out, done my thing the night before with or without somebody else.
With or without companionship.
Yeah. And showed up to the comp, just be like, yeah, sweet, who am I smashing? What's going on?
Yeah.
And had a mad day.
Okay, that's great. Well, like Ronaldo, they said, not Ronaldo Jr., of former glory in Brazil, Ronaldo used to be getting head before he'd walk out.
Football player.
Yeah.
Right on.
Before he'd walk out on the pitch and score like 3 goals. But let's
talk
to the science on that. And this is because I was doing some research. I did a deep dive ages ago.
I bet you did a deep dive.
Man.
It's research, guys. Yeah. Mom, don't come in here.
No, I was talking about Reddit, motherfucker. I was like, well, it's interesting because there's so many different talks in the world of strength about abstaining, not all this stuff, right? Here's what they have shown. This is the science on abstinence. Abstaining for months at a time is not necessarily good, but 7 days, pressure release, within 24 hours of the pressure release, your testosterone will spike almost immediately.
7 days of abstinence.
7 days of
pressure
abstinence,
release.
Pressure release.
24 hours before the event.
Yes.
Wow.
The next 24 hours, your testosterone is going to be through the fucking roof.
Okay.
And so that's how to run it.
I'll give it a go.
There you go.
I'll give it a go for the next podcast.
I will abstain.
I'll be bringing that JT energy to the show.
Oh, shit. I think
It covers us.
it is. That's
There
the
it is,
pod.
fam. Look, main takeaways, keep it simple. Don't add extra stress to your plate. Stay chill, keep eating, keep sleeping, keep training, and just, I think at first, showing up to competition is just about getting used to going to a competition and doing that thing. It's not even about winning, right? You can do that after you've got a few comps under the belt and go, all right, I want to show up, I want to win my division. And then maybe then we're talking some slightly different things. But thank you for the people who send those questions through on the Instagram, the YouTube and stuff. We appreciate it. And hey, if you need help with your training, we got you. Go to bulletproof for BJJ.com. Start your free trial. Strength, mobility for jiu-jitsu. We'll see you there.